All right, so I'm gonna go to Costco now because we are down to 2 rolls of toilet paper, and hopefully we'll get some. Haven't been worried, just kind of annoyed each time we go and we can't get it. You know, I've been getting really frustrated lately on Facebook with friends, strangers, and I shouldn't, because I should understand that not all of them, most of them probably don't understand how to research properly. They can get by in a way, or they can think that they can get by, but it becomes more problematic because, first off, yes, it is true that we are in an information age where everything is biased. Every source is biased. Every source is bought. Every source is paid for because, you're not paying for the source. You are not paying money for your newspaper anymore. You are not paying for a subscription to a newspaper or anything like that. You find loopholes around that. They can't make money, and so all of the news sources have been bought out, and there are 6 superpowers who have agendas. Yes, you are correct in understanding that, but what you aren't correct in knowing is that because of this, because of that, and misinformation, which is everywhere, it's just so abundant, and even statistics, right? Depending how you take the statistics, depending how you interpret the statistics, depending on why the statistics lay out the way that they do, you can manipulate them. And so, even when it comes to statistics and hard data, that is, these are facts, it can all be manipulated. And so even if to that extent it can be manipulated, then almost every source can be or is a manipulation of the truth. And so with that said, no source is completely trustworthy. And at the same time, that means that every source is usable. Now, don't get ahead of yourself there. You have to understand, what is the information that you're trying to get from the source? Like, what is the claim? What is the claim of fact? So we're dealing with a lot of facts now, and then people have a hard time inferring truth or other facts, or attributing motive, or understanding what the source is behind the fact that we don't really have the ability to make a claim about yet. So there's the difference between claims of fact and claims of value, and we're working a lot with things that are claims of fact that then we ascribe a value claim to afterwards. And a lot of this stuff we just do in our heads, but you really need to think about it carefully and objectively as you do it, because the very fact that it's a value argument means that it's an opinion, or that it is something that is subject to certain criteria that not everyone holds to. So you have to be as objective as you possibly can in making your value arguments. So with that said, you have to look at a source and understand what are the fact arguments that they're making, or the fact claims that they're making, and the value claims that they're making. You need to be able to differentiate between the two, and then you need to be able to assess the facts that they are presenting, they are claiming, are they enough to support the value claim that they are making. And before you go there, though, you still have to go back to the fact claim. So it is a claim of fact. It is not a fact necessarily. What you have to do is then assess their evidence that they are claiming proves the fact. And you have to think, okay, is this hard data? Is this expert opinion? Is this eyewitness enough? Could this be interpreted a different way? Could you extrapolate a different fact out of this? Why this fact and not another fact? Because there's always going to be some subjective element out of it. Like, why did this thing happen? Why did this cop press his knee for so long on the neck of this black man? Is it because they're all part of a conspiracy, and that the black man isn't really dead and it was all an act and everything like that? Because I just read that. Or was the guy angry about it? See, this is subjective. You cannot know what is in the guy's head. Even the guy himself doesn't really know what was in his head, because we will try to then go back and reinterpret events that have happened even to us, and we deceive ourselves. This is how complicated it is when you are trying to figure out objective truth, which, by the way, absolute truth is a thing. It's a thing. There is really absolute truth. It's just that there are so many subjective things that make it so that objective truth is very specific and almost seems to be unknowable oftentimes, especially when we're talking about if you are going to try and understand the motive, like claim a fact of the motive, which don't think that that's not important, understand in a court case on murder, when we are talking between first-degree murder and third-degree murder, manslaughter, there's a huge difference in the sentence there, but you are still trying to understand the fact of what someone's motive was. Sometimes people reveal themselves in their words written down, maybe in an exchange with another person, and you can put all that stuff together. It's called circumstantial evidence, but it's really hard to prove objectively what someone's motive is, and yet outside of all of us, there is definitely a motive that someone had or has about each thing that they do. And just because you can't prove it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that we can't actually 100% know it. And that's why law gets so complicated, and you see like O.J. Simpson getting let off for one, but then not for the other, because one thing you can't prove without the shadow of a doubt. So when we come back to trying to understand, the significance, it is really important to understand motive or to try and figure out motive, but it's also really important to, because you're doing that, because you're working within a value claim that is so difficult to prove, that you don't jump the gun and go all the way to conspiracy when greed or selfishness or something like that would do. Like, let's say, is Monsanto trying to poison us all so that it can fulfill a global conspiracy to reduce the world population for Bill Gates and every one of those, elitists out there who are trying to save the world by killing everyone in it? That could be true. That could actually be true, but you can't really prove that well, and which is harder? Which is harder to prove? That, or that people are greedy and they are trying to make as much money as possible. That is something that everyone should be able to admit to. I'm with you on the conspiracies. They're there, and they're not necessarily... I see bath tissue. They have 2 things of bath tissue in their car. I just want to take a moment to enjoy this. I haven't gotten toilet paper the whole time.
I know.
I'm down to 2 rolls. This is amazing. And we made it. Woo! Limit 1. I saw those people. They had like 4. How did they get that? How did they get 4? Did they go through 3 more times? What? Here's a conspiracy theory for you. BPA, saturated paper. So when you touch it, it absorbs into your skin immediately. They use it for heat transfer as well as, hardening plastics and all kinds of fun stuff. So just FYI. And BPA again, I have to touch it unless I'm wearing gloves. So maybe the people with gloves are on the right track, whatever. But, I was in the store, so this is also important. Now I have to wipe down everything I touched since then because I forgot to use this right away. Touched everything, including my key, my phone, this thing. Anyway, so, you can check if that's true. That was a claim of fact I made about the receipts. So it is really important to check for yourself. So we're talking about sources here, and claims of fact and claims of value, and understanding them. So what I mean by anything can be used as a source is that it depends on what your claim is, and it depends about the content, what you are talking about. If it has to do with a tweet by Cardi B and what she's actually saying, what is your argument about? That celebrities are sicking their fans on people who don't have as much power as them, so the power dynamic is a problem when all of your fans just start hate threatening that person because they said something about how all you're doing is, setting a bad example example, and then you bully the crap out of them by sticking your fans on them. So where would you go to for the source of that deleted tweet? Well, maybe you would have to go to some like random hip-hop radio website, which wouldn't be a credible source for something that's going on with the CDC, but it is a credible source for getting that beef from a rap celebrity. So do you see how that can be a source? But then also Fox News. Yes, Fox News could technically be a source of information. Understand, Fox News, MSNBC, all the different news outlets do get material, a majority of their material, from places like Associated Press, which you could go to and you could see how they've modified the headline to fit their own bias. Everything can be a source so long as you understand what the bias is there and what you can extrapolate from the information being given. If you understand that this part over here is some information, some facts, some eyewitness account that they're working with, and then here is where they make their value argument. Okay, well, right there, you can either agree or disagree with their value claim. Are they jumping too far? Is their facts or what they're using as facts enough to substantiate the claim of value that they are making, or even making a claim that this is a fact that, okay, well, so just for this example, so we're not talking about Fox News here because this is just the only example that I can think of off the top of my head that will be very clear. So all cops are not racist. So you can make an argument about what racism is and that every single person that is white that looks like me is racist. That's a whole nother thing to talk about. But let's say you are using the evidence of one cop doing an extremely racist act that is undeniable and saying that all cops are now racist because of that, or even 5 cops or 20 cops doing this thing, and then now you are saying ACAB, all cops are bastards. That cannot be enough evidence to prove that. When you say all, that is, again, an absolute statement. We're bringing it back to absolute and subjective things here. If you say all, that is absolute, and you are saying that that means every single cop, and you know that's not true. Now, if you're using hyperbole to make a point, it is still way too far, because, in fact, most cops would not do those kinds of things, depending on where you live. See, it's hard for even me to make that claim without there's just not enough information. Okay, go and data mine through all police body cam, action cam footage, and tell me that you can analyze all the data. I mean, even in that case, they'll cover their body cam with their gun or their rifle or whatever they're using at the time. Now, are they covering it intentionally, or is that the resting position that they are taught to use? Is that taught so that they will be covering their body cam? Now you're gonna have to find more information for that. So it's harder to make those claims, to go back there. But what I can tell you is these are all very simple concepts, but unless you evoke them, unless you put them in your arsenal and use them with everything as a lens, it will be so easy, because all you have to do is slip up with one thing. And if you build your next argument or your next point off of that earlier premise, everything after that premise is faulty, because you're using false information to build an argument off of it. I don't want to make this any longer. Just the whole point for you to understand is that anything can be used as a source, but you have to understand what it can be a source of. What does it tell of? What other possible thing could this support instead of the thing you want it to support? Because if it's just about you wanting it to support it, you can make almost anything support what you believe. And that is frightening. I mean, hey, cool, your mind is great. It can do all kinds of creative things. But that is not the kind of thing you want to be creative about. You don't want to somehow bend the pieces till they fit in a puzzle of your own making. That is quite dangerous, and the media does it. We talk trash on the media for doing it, but then we become the media by doing the same thing that they've modeled before us. So don't do that. If you're going to claim that the Washington Post isn't a good source because it's technically owned by Jeff Bezos and he has a $6 million contract with the CIA. Do you think Fox News doesn't have a kind of contract with the CIA? Do you think that Facebook doesn't have a contract with the CIA? They all have a contract with the CIA, I'm sure. Look it up. You could figure that out. Why wouldn't they? The CIA is intelligence. It has to get information somewhere. Who owns stocks in what? Everything goes back to, you think one side is good and one side is bad? In media, in politics? If you are coming from that premise, then you are going to be flawed in everything else you're arguing. Biden isn't a good guy. Trump isn't a good guy. Bill Gates isn't a good guy. Jeff Bezos isn't a good guy. All the people that have power. Everyone is a bad guy. I'm a bad guy. My motive, I'll tell you, is I don't want to be annoyed, and I also don't want you to spread false information, and I don't want to spread false information. This is a tool that you can use to make sure that you are accurately assessing the kinds of stuff that you are putting out. So use your brain, and hopefully you will check me if I'm not using my brain, and then we can do this together. But I'm really sick of seeing stuff that is not benefiting, it is only detracting, and you think that, oh, well, I need to spread this because it's scary information, blah, blah, blah. That the world is buying into these Sandy Hooks and these agendas, and yeah, okay, just like everything can be used as a source of something, and likewise, if something is false in that source, it doesn't mean that everything is false. In fact, how do you get people to believe something unless there is an amount of truth to it? So it's understanding what can be taken as truth from this information that is being handed to me, that is being force-fed down my social media feed. If I can't look anywhere. Billboards, everything is a source of information and misinformation. Kind of crazy, but not.